Japan's unconditional surrender in August 1945, a direct and devastating consequence of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the decisive late Soviet entry into the Pacific War, marked the abrupt, final end of the imperial era and the immediate commencement of the 7-year Allied occupation, 1945–1952. The entire nation was placed under the sole authority of the Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, SCAP, General Douglas MacArthur, making the occupation unique in its monolithic control compared to the multi-power administration in Germany. The initial, profound shock of military defeat, coupled with the immense physical, spiritual, and material devastation across the homeland, provided a volatile yet unprecedented environment for radical societal and political restructuring. SCAP's primary, non-negotiable goals were clearly articulated: comprehensive demilitarization to permanently abolish Japan's capacity for aggression, and thorough democratization to permanently transform the country into a peaceful, stable, and strategically reliable pro-Western ally in Asia. The absolute first and immediate priority of the Allied occupation was the total, irreversible dismantling of Japan's powerful military state and the vast political and industrial infrastructure that had supported its decades of aggressive expansionism. All components of the Japanese armed forces, the Imperial Army and Navy, were swiftly and formally demobilized, their equipment and assets seized, and the nation's immense armament industries were permanently shuttered or converted to civilian production. Crucially, a sweeping ideological cleanup, known as the Purge, saw military and political leaders involved in wartime aggression formally removed from over 200,000 key public offices, severely impacting government ministries, the entire educational establishment, and large corporations. Furthermore, comprehensive war crimes tribunals, centralized at the Tokyo War Crimes trials, were swiftly convened to hold high-ranking officials personally accountable for atrocities committed during the war, signaling an uncompromising end to the deeply entrenched tradition of unchecked military authority and political impunity. The most profound and enduring political transformation was the rapid drafting and unilateral implementation of the 1947 Constitution, officially titled the Constitution of Japan, which definitively abrogated and replaced the old, rigid Meiji Constitution. This landmark document fundamentally and permanently shifted the source of all political authority from the ancient, quasi-divine emperor to the collective Japanese people, establishing the foundational and immutable principle of popular sovereignty. The emperor was officially downgraded from a divine, semi-religious ruler to the mere symbol of the state and of the unity of the people, and was explicitly stripped of all political or military decision-making authority. The new system established a robust parliamentary democracy, with the bicameral Diet, Parliament, recognized as the highest and sole organ of state power, ensuring that all political authority stemmed legally and practically from the express will of the newly empowered citizenry. Unique, revolutionary, and historically unprecedented to the new Constitution was Article 9, the world-famous Peace Clause, often referred to as the No War Clause. This provision contained a dual, explicit commitment that permanently altered Japan's role in global affairs. First, Japan formally and perpetually renounced war as a sovereign right of the nation. And second, it pledged in perpetuity that land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. This article was a direct, uncompromising legal and ethical response to the aggressive, destructive militarism of the pre-war era, while later, pragmatic interpretations allowed for the formation of the Self-Defense Forces, SDF, for strictly defensive needs, Article 9 permanently and uniquely enshrined pacifism as a core legal and ideological pillar of the modern Japanese state, fundamentally limiting its military capacity and focusing its energies elsewhere. The occupation reforms spurred a massive and long overdue social revolution, particularly concerning the fundamental rights of Japanese women, who had long been legally marginalized. For the first time in Japan's entire history, universal suffrage was unconditionally granted, allowing millions of women to cast their votes in the landmark 1946 general election and gain a political voice. Crucially, the new constitution guaranteed explicit equal rights for men and women in all major societal areas, including marriage, divorce, inheritance, education, and employment, explicitly dismantling the rigid, traditional, and legally reinforced patriarchal family system, i.e. system, which had systematically subjugated women for centuries. This comprehensive legal change was foundational, instantly providing women with essential legal status and economic autonomy, and irreversibly altering the Japanese social landscape. The occupation authorities correctly viewed the hyper-militaristic, aggressively nationalistic pre-war education system as a core ideological cause of Japan's aggressive foreign policy and total war commitment, acting as a vehicle for imperial indoctrination. Consequently, education reform was sweeping, immediate, and deep. Compulsory education was extended from 6 to 9 years, and curricula were immediately secularized, standardized, and liberalized. Courses and textbooks promoting ultranationalism, imperial obedience, and militaristic ideology were summarily banned and purged, and the powerful centralized control of the education ministry was drastically curtailed. The overarching goal was to swiftly instill the critical values of democracy, individualism, and global cooperation in the next generation, transforming them from subservient subjects of the emperor into fully engaged, independent, and critically thinking citizens of a democracy. One of the most radical, extensive, and arguably the single most successful economic and social reforms undertaken by SCAP was the Comprehensive Land Reform Program, enacted primarily between 1947 and 1950. Before the war, an overwhelming majority, nearly 60%, of all agricultural land was worked by impoverished tenant farmers who paid cripplingly high rents, often 50% of their harvest, to wealthy, often absentee, landlords. SCAP mandated the total redistribution of this land, compelling landlords to sell their excessive holdings to the government at fixed, low prices, which the government then resold affordably to tenant farmers at extremely low, subsidized prices over many years. This powerful reform fundamentally altered the deeply entrenched rural power structure, eliminated tenancy, and successfully created a large, stable class of independent land-owning farmers, achieving immediate widespread economic stability, social equity, and a political bulwark against the appeal of communism in the countryside. To comprehensively democratize the centralized Japanese economy and break the financial monopoly that had been so closely linked to pre-war militarism, SCAP aggressively attempted to dissolve the zaibatsu, the massive, centralized, family-controlled industrial and financial conglomerates like Mitsui, Mitsubishi, and Sumitomo that exerted immense influence over the imperial government and military. This anti-monopoly reform aimed to permanently decentralize economic power, promote fair market competition, and foster genuine free market capitalism. While initial efforts were aggressive and included the breakup of family holding companies, the rapid emergence of the Cold War, known as the reverse course, saw these dissolution efforts significantly scaled back, allowing the former zaibatsu to eventually recoalesce into the less centralized Keiretsu business groups, which nonetheless retained significant financial and industrial clout in the post-war economy, but lacked the tight military ties of the previous era. By late 1948, the political and strategic focus of the occupation shifted dramatically and rapidly due to escalating Cold War tensions between the Western Allies and the Soviet bloc, compounded by the imminent communist victory in China. This pivotal transition, widely recognized as the reverse course, saw the US radically prioritize immediate Japanese economic stability and rapid unilateral growth over the strict continuation of initial democratic and anti-monopoly reforms. SCAP began actively scaling back aggressive anti-monopoly efforts, openly supported existing conservative political structures, and ruthlessly suppressed burgeoning leftist and communist labor movements, viewing them as destabilizing. Japan was now strategically viewed not primarily as a former enemy needing structural reform, but as a crucial, indispensable anti-communist bulwark and strategic ally in the Asian theater, fundamentally altering the nature and intent of the remaining years of the occupation. The decisive shift in focus toward rapid economic development led to massive, targeted US financial investment, crucial technological transfers, and significant economic assistance, successfully spurring Japan's phenomenal post-war recovery. Prime Minister Shigeru Yoshida institutionalized this strategic priority with the development of the Yoshida Doctrine, which posited that Japan should concentrate almost entirely on unprecedented economic growth and technological advancement, consciously delegating its costly security needs entirely to the US under the newly formed Security Treaty. By consciously focusing national resources away from massive military expenditure and strictly into highly productive industries, especially steel, shipbuilding, and later high-tech electronics, Japan expertly laid the powerful foundation for its legendary economic miracle that would peak dramatically in the 1960s and 1970s. Despite the constitutional commitment of Article 9 to renounce all war potential and the opposition from leftist parties, the rapidly escalating Korean War, 1950-1953, forced an unavoidable and pragmatic military compromise. General MacArthur, deeply concerned about regional instability and the lack of local security forces, ordered the immediate creation of the National Police Reserve, NPR, ostensibly a civilian law enforcement force to maintain internal order. Following the formal end of the occupation, this NPR force was gradually expanded, professionalized, and evolved into the Japan Self-Defense Forces, SDF, in 1954. Although legally constrained by the Constitution to strictly defensive missions and civilian political control, the SDF represented a geopolitical necessity, allowing Japan to assume some basic security responsibility while still maintaining the fundamental principles of its pacifist constitution. The 7-year Allied occupation officially and formally ended with the historic signing of the Treaty of San Francisco in 1951, which took legal effect in April 1952. Under this treaty, Japan formally regained its full national sovereignty, ending the direct control of SCAP, and rejoined the international community as an independent state. Simultaneously, the crucial US-Japan Security Treaty was signed, allowing the US to maintain extensive military bases and personnel within Japan for regional defense, thus continuing the security delegation established under the Yoshida Doctrine. This dual treaty arrangement solidified Japan's post-war identity: politically democratic, legally pacifist, economically capitalist, and firmly allied with the United States for security guarantees in a volatile region.
The rapid, sustained economic growth of the 1960s ushered in a massive, visible shift in Japanese daily life, successfully creating a large, stable, and increasingly affluent middle class and fueling
a vibrant consumer culture focused intensely on acquiring modern amenities. The era was famously defined by the popularization of the three sacred treasures, a phrase jokingly borrowed from the imperial regalia: the refrigerator, the washing machine, and the black and white television set. The widespread, rapid ownership of these essential domestic appliances symbolized the profound psychological recovery from wartime deprivation and the collective societal commitment to achieving a comfortable, stable, modern, urban lifestyle, marking a decisive break from the austerity of the past. The post-war cultural environment was defined by intense syncretism, the dynamic blending of deep-rooted Japanese traditions with massive, pervasive external, particularly American, cultural influences. While traditional arts like kabuki theater, no drama, and the precise tea ceremony maintained significant prestige and were actively supported, Western popular culture, especially jazz music, blockbuster Hollywood films, rock and roll, and the rapid adoption of baseball, which became intensely popular, was embraced wholeheartedly and enthusiastically. This led to a unique cultural synthesis where new forms of media, like early manga and anime, began to flourish, expertly translating Western media forms and technologies through a distinctly Japanese historical, artistic, and ethical lens, ensuring local relevance. Economic reorganization and the intense national focus on industrial productivity led to massive, rapid social shifts, primarily encompassing rapid urbanization and the iconic rise of the salaryman. Millions of people migrated from rural agricultural areas to major metropolitan hubs like Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya to work in the burgeoning high-growth industries and large corporations. The salaryman, a dedicated, salaried office worker, became the ubiquitous, archetypal figure of the new society, routinely sacrificing personal time and family life for corporate loyalty, guaranteed promotion, and absolute job stability. This dramatic concentration of population accelerated fundamental changes in social customs, gender roles, and inevitably fractured the traditional, extended family structures that had defined pre-war rural life. The post-war period was the crucial, fertile development phase for two of Japan's most globally significant and enduring cultural exports: manga, comics, and animation. Early pioneering artists, most notably Osamu Tezuka, often reverently called the god of manga, adapted Disney's cinematic techniques and American comic book structures to create new, dynamic, long-form visual narratives. These forms provided a powerful, accessible medium for reflecting on the trauma of the war, the challenges of modernization, and the changing Japanese identity, often mixing traditional visual elements with powerful, serious themes of science fiction, pacifism, human rights, and democracy, making them relevant to the younger generation. The urgent, non-negotiable need to rebuild completely devastated cities led to an immediate, powerful boom in modernist architecture, often blending international functionalist styles with traditional Japanese spatial concepts and materials. Leading architects sought to create a new urban and national identity that was deliberately free from the historical and aesthetic constraints of the imperial past. New projects focused intensively on highly efficient, functional, and rigorously seismic-resistant structures, reflecting a national mindset that was profoundly pragmatic, forward-looking, and driven by technical excellence rather than historical grandeur or ostentation. perfectly symbolizing Japan's forward gaze. The Japanese political landscape stabilized definitively in 1955 with the formation of the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP. This massive coalition of conservative pro-business forces dominated national politics for nearly 4 decades, creating the enduring political system known as the 1955 system. The LDP's long-term electoral dominance ensured continuous political stability and reliably maintained the foundational economic policies established during the occupation free market capitalism, a steadfast alliance with the US, and an absolute commitment to economic growth, while consistently resisting efforts to fundamentally revise the pacifist constitution, particularly Article 9, despite internal pressure. The successful transformation of Japan from an expansionist, militaristic empire to a pacifist, globally engaged economic power was historically complete by the 1970s. After rejoining the international community, Japan rapidly became a major global exporter, a primary contributor to global trade, and a significant provider of international development aid, particularly to Asian nations that had once been its wartime victims. Japan's unique post-war success demonstrated that a nation could achieve global prominence, immense influence, and respect not through military conquest, but through technological innovation and overwhelming economic strength, becoming a powerful model for post-conflict recovery, peaceful development, and the benefits of international cooperation. The comprehensive political, economic, and social changes implemented during the 7-year occupation, though initially externally imposed by SCAP, were successfully internalized and embraced by the majority of the Japanese people due to their demonstrable benefits. The enduring legacy includes a deeply rooted parliamentary democracy, strong constitutional protection of individual rights, including the permanent establishment of women's rights, and a powerful economic engine built on innovation and education. While debates over constitutional revision, especially the restrictions of Article 9 and historical accountability, continue to this day, the successful post-war transformation remains one of the most remarkable, thorough, and successful societal rebuilding projects in all of modern history, defining Japan's contemporary identity as a stable, wealthy, and fundamentally peaceful nation. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, hit the like button and subscribe for more daily content.